What's up, Raider Nation? This is TRU Raider Podcast, and I am TRU Raider. And today, what I want to talk about is, does Fernando Mendoza actually measure up to the quarterbacks that were drafted over the last couple of quarterback classes? There's a lot of speculation going on about this on social media, mainstream media, in my comment section. A lot of people don't like the idea of picking up Mendoza. A lot of people are really bought into getting Mendoza. And so I want to get on here with you guys and let's discuss it. So what we're going to be looking at is stat comparisons, right? And I get it, right? I'm not a person that believes that stats are everything, but there's not a whole lot that we can look at just on paper. I prepared a little slideshow that I'm going to be able to share on YouTube. If you're on TikTok, I apologize. I'm not going to be able to share a screen on there, but we can still discuss it. And I want to look at, how does Fernando Mendoza compared to quarterbacks like Cam Ward, like Shedeur Sanders, like Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Bo Nix, Michael Penix Jr., JJ McCarthy, Drake May, and let's go ahead and let's get into it. So let me share a screen real quick on this. That way we can talk about it. Let me see. Okay, I'm going to go into slideshow mode. All right. So, first off, Fernando Mendoza, right? Let's go ahead and talk about him. Indiana Hoosiers, Heisman winner, 6'5", 225 pounds. A lot of people are speculating that he is absolutely the guy that's going to go number one overall in this draft. Some people want to say that, well, Mendoza, in other draft classes, where would he drop? Where would he go? So if you look at that, he only played 3 years in college football. He started off at Cal. He played 2 years at Cal, and then he moved over to Indiana, where they've gone undefeated. They won the SEC championship. They beat Ohio State, and they are moving into the playoffs. They're going to be playing against Alabama. I'm looking forward to that game. I really want to see what's going to end up coming up with that, how he's going to play, is he going to measure up to Dante Moore, to Ty Simpson. This is going to be very, very interesting, right? And a lot of people look at his stat line, and I believe that a lot of the people that are getting super negative in my comments about this whole situation are box score people, right? Because when I ask people, because they say, okay, I want to trade back. He's not worth taking. Okay, so who do you want to pick up when you trade back? And it's like, and crickets, and people not really knowing what to be able to do, right? And I get it, right? There's the idea of, like, we have a lot of building to do. Why don't we use this to trade back, build the trenches, build this team up? And what happens is, if we build the trenches and we build this team up, for one, we don't have a quarterback, right? But whatever bridge, let's say we run it back with Aiden O'Connell or somebody like that. People want to get a Malik Willis or, other things like that. What's going to end up happening is, we're going to end up in a position where we're not picking at the top of the draft, because if you build the trenches properly, even with a mediocre quarterback, you're going to win a handful of games. And then we're going to have to trade away the farm to move up in future drafts to be able to get a quarterback. And it's like, if we are picking at number one, get a quarterback now. So this dude threw for 2,980 yards, 33 touchdowns to 6 interceptions, 316 attempts. And I think that that's a big one right there. He was only sacked 18 times with a rating of 181. I absolutely love the way that this guy plays. He is a guy that can move on his feet. His rushing yards, 240 rushing yards, nothing to call home about. 6 rushing touchdowns. I do like that he is a threat in that sense, but not a guy that's trying to be a running back. Because when you look at quarterbacks that are trying to be a running back, and we'll talk about Jaden Daniels here, and Jaden Daniels is a guy that I definitely wanted to get, but the dude is injured. He stays injured. You know what I'm saying? Look at Anthony Richardson staying injured. So we'll see how that goes, right? People in the chat saying, what do you say about trading for Joe Burrow? I say that that's a bad idea, because this guy doesn't even know if he wants to play football. He's constantly injured. And if we trade to go get a Joe Burrow, the same argument goes is, no quarterback could play behind this offensive line, and that includes Joe Burrow, right? People are also now starting to say, oh, Lamar Jackson, we're not going to get Lamar Jackson. We're not going to get Joe Burrow. What we are going to do is we're going to draft a quarterback. And that's 99% accurate, I would say. I would really, really be shocked if we did anything else. So I love the way that Fernando Mendoza can see the field. He's very good at diagnosing coverages. You know, when they show different kind of packages and then they change it as soon as the ball snaps, he's really quick at processing that and reading it and beating defenses in those situations. And I don't want to just spend too much time talking about Fernando Mendoza, but this is a guy that is very accurate. He's very accurate when he's being blitzed. He can make all the throws, basically. The only spot that I really see where Fernando Mendoza really struggles is being able to throw on the run outside of the pocket. He is primarily a pocket passer. He can get on the move. He can make throws, but if he's not going to play hero ball like somebody like a Caleb Williams or a Patrick Mahomes, right? He's not that kind of quarterback. Some of his pro comps are more like a Jared Goff or a Brock Purdy. But I could only imagine somebody who's as intelligent as a Fernando Mendoza actually getting in here, with somebody like Tom Brady. And if Tom Brady is actually going to get involved at all, then really this is a guy that could pick up a lot of good tools, because Tom Brady's strengths were not about throwing on the run and playing hero ball and being a running back and all this stuff. Tom Brady's strengths was diagnosing defenses and being able to really read the field very, very well. And, we have David saying who will be the Raiders coach. And that's another big piece of this, right? Is that if we do not get a quarterback, we're not going to be able to attract a new head coach, which means we're going to run it back with Pete Carroll. And if we run it back with Pete Carroll, that's going to be really, really bad, you guys. I mean, Pete Carroll, no quarterback, it's going to be another awful season, right? And I get it. Some people are saying we need to take time and build and build and build. But what's going to happen is you're going to start losing players like Max Crosby. You're going to get to a point where Brock Bowers is no longer on a rookie contract. There's a lot of pieces that we'll end up losing in the process of doing that. And if you look at teams like the Bears, like the Patriots, where they were awful teams, and they went out there and they got a quarterback, and they did not have other pieces in place. They did not have their head coach. They did not have an offensive line. And even the first year with those guys, it did not look pretty. And then they were able to hire coaches, right? Mike Vrabel, Ben Johnson, because those coaches, when they became available, they said, hey, look, these guys, they got a quarterback, and I can run it with that, right? Because if we're trying to get a coach to come in here when we don't even have a quarterback, what's going to happen is just like this last offseason where you have coaches like Ben Johnson who come and interview, and then they're like, yeah, I'm going to go over here to the Bears where they actually have a quarterback, right? Jesse Minter is one of those that we might be targeting. He's the defensive coordinator for the Chargers. I mean, another one is Mike LaFleur, the offensive coordinator from the Rams. He comes from the Shanahan tree and Sean McVay. But the one that I really want is offensive coordinator Clint Kubiak from the Seattle Seahawks. This guy he calls an absolutely great offensive scheme. He calls a lot of 12 personnel, which is absolutely amazing because we have the best tight end room in the NFL, and we do not utilize it properly. And so I think it would be really, really good to go out there and get this guy. He's only 38 years old. It'd be nice to have a coach that's like not like a Pete Carroll where it's like, well, we could have him a maximum of 3 to 4 years, before he's just way too old, right? So let's go ahead and get into the next quarterback, Dante Moore. So Dante Moore, he's a sophomore at Oregon, 6'3", 206 pounds. Good measurables, accurate quarterback. He has not started a whole lot of games as a college quarterback. I want to say it's 14. I don't have the stat pulled up right here. Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe it's about 14 starts, right? And really, you usually want to see a college quarterback get about 30 starts before you start talking about drafting him, especially in the first round. He did definitely have a good season over here at Oregon. 340 attempts, 72 completion percentage, 3,046 yards, 28 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. He was sacked 12 times, a rating of 170. And a lot of people say, well, Dante Moore is a more mobile quarterback than Fernando Mendoza. Yes, he throws on the move better than Fernando Mendoza. That's for sure. I don't feel like he navigates the pocket nearly as well as Mendoza. I like the way that Mendoza is able to navigate the pocket but still stay in it, knowing when to step up, when to sidestep, things like that. He had 196 rushing yards to 2 touchdowns, and one of those was a long of 49 rushing yards on 1 attempt. So basically, a quarter of his rushing yards came from 1 rush. So, when it comes to Dante Moore, I think he's a good quarterback. If we were in a position where you told me we're going to trade back and be able to pick up Dante Moore and an offensive tackle in the first round, I'm not going to be mad about that. But honestly, I do think that Fernando Mendoza has a higher floor. And some people speculate that Dante Moore has a higher ceiling than Fernando Mendoza. He's only 20 years old. Mendoza's 22. But I don't know, man. I do believe that the way that Mendoza has progressed throughout, being a 3-star recruit coming out of high school, the way he played at Cal, and then just progress. I'd see him taking another step up when he gets to the NFL. And I have a feeling that Fernando Mendoza is really going to start to shine in year 2 and 3. I believe his rookie year will be like it looks good. It looks better. Raiders finally have a quarterback, but we're not dominating the league or dominating the division immediately, right? I think that we'd be really hard pressed to get any kind of quarterback that puts us in that position because we have a tough division, you guys. I don't think that the Chiefs are going to stay down for very long. And so, we got a fight ahead of us. You know what I'm saying? Jeffrey said a great QB can make an offensive line look better because they process quicker and get the ball out quicker. And that's exactly true, right? So many people say, oh, well, this, rookie QB is going to get destroyed behind our offensive line. Our offensive line has looked shitty for a couple of reasons. Part of that is Brendan Carroll being the offensive line coach and the run game coordinator. Part of it was, bad play calling. Another part of it is teams not really being afraid of Geno Smith. And just knowing that if they just all out, rush us immediately, Geno Smith isn't going to get the ball out quick enough, and they're going to be able to either stuff the run behind the line of scrimmage or get the sack. Also, we have a couple of pieces that are moving around on our offensive line, especially JPJ and Colton Miller coming back from their injuries next year. I believe that Charles Grant, 3rd-round rookie, and Caleb Rogers, 3rd-round rookie, are going to be fighting for starting roles. And I really think that we either only need to pick up I think we only need to pick up one offensive lineman, honestly, and put them in the right place and the right coaching scheme, especially if we have like a Clint Kubiak kind of offense. It's going to look a lot better for sure. Ralph with the follow, salute. So let's go ahead and get into this next quarterback down the line, Cam Ward. So I want to talk about Cam Ward because he was the number 1 overall pick this last offseason, right? He's 6'2", 219 pounds. He's 23 years old. So his college stats, I mean, he was one of those that had the extra COVID year. He was in college for 5 years. UIW, I mean, he started off with 2,200 yards and 24 touchdowns. The following year, he had 4,600 yards and 47 touchdowns to 10 interceptions. So he went over to WSU after that, where he had, 3,200 passing yards and 23 touchdowns, and then 3,700 passing yards and 25 touchdowns in the 2 years that he was there. And after that, he went back into the transfer portal, went to Miami. This is where he got drafted from. 454 passing attempts. This is over 130 more than Fernando Mendoza, in that he had 4,300 passing yards and 39 touchdowns to 7 interceptions, a rating of 172, which is damn good, right? But when you look at 454 passing attempts to 316 passing attempts, um, and you have about 1,300 more passing yards, that's a whole lot of passing attempts, right? And a big part of my belief when it comes to quarterbacks is that, and when it comes to stats, is stats are just stats, right? You look at Dak Prescott, you look at Justin Herbert. These are really good quarterbacks that always have really good stats. But the one thing that these quarterbacks lack is timing. If you look at Jalen Hurts, if you look at Bo Nix, if you look at quarterbacks that have weaker stats but better timing, you don't need to go out there and just absolutely have the best stats in the league to be a quarterback that's going to win games. What you need is to get the proper throws in at the proper times, and what really finally sold me when it came to Fernando Mendoza is when I was watching the game against Ohio State. And I felt like this is a good measure, right? Because Ohio State was the defending champions, the best team in college football, and they have so many players, especially on their defense, that are going to go to the NFL. A lot of them first round picks. And so, sorry about that. I forgot to put do not disturb on my phone. So all these first round picks coming out of Ohio State's defense, and Fernando Mendoza didn't go out there and play lights out, right? He didn't go out there and just absolutely dominate the game. What he did, though, is, first play of the game, he gets crushed by Curry, right? He got hit so damn hard, and he was down. And I thought, man, this sucks. I really wanted to see Fernando Mendoza versus Julian Sand, because previously Julian Sand was the quarterback that I wanted to get, and I know he's not coming out until possibly next year. And so I was like, nah, let's not get a quarterback. Let's wait. I want Julian Sand. And watching him rise to the occasion, right? He sat out for one play, came back in, and absolutely just showed that he has that dog in him, right? And when he talks after games and stuff, you think man, this kid's kind of a weenie. He showed me on that play that, nah, man, he ain't no punk. Yeah, Carlos G. Mendoza had 6 touchdowns and 5 interceptions against top teams he played against. Not great. And when you look at that Ohio State game, he didn't have crazy stats, but he delivered when he needed to and did what he had to get the win, right? I'm not looking for a guy that's going to be a Joe Burrow who throws 60 touchdowns in college football in 1 year and things like that, right? Would I love to have that? Yeah. Is that available to us? No. So do I think that Fernando Mendoza can't be a good quarterback because of, the competition that he played against? I think he played against plenty good competition, right? Do I think that Fernando Mendoza can't be a good quarterback for us because he didn't, have the all-time best stats of college football? No, I don't believe that. I believe that this kid can come out here and definitely play. Diego Pavia, John, could be the next Derek Carr. That's kind of a crazy comparison because Fernando Mendoza acts more like a Derek Carr than Pavia. Pavia is from Albuquerque, and he's from my home state, right? And so I'm rooting for that dude, but the way that he behaved during that whole Heisman thing, the way that his brothers get kicked out of his games or get arrested at his games, and he defends them on their behavior, he doesn't belong in Vegas, man. We need somebody that's going to behave themselves in Vegas. You know what I'm saying? So let's go ahead and get on to this next quarterback. Oh, I also want to talk about his rushing yards. Cam Ward, it was talked about being a dual threat, but really he only had 204 rushing yards and 4 touchdowns with his legs. So I do think that he is more of a playmaker than Fernando Mendoza, but I believe Fernando Mendoza reads defenses and makes more precision throws than Cam Ward. Do I think Cam Ward is a good quarterback? Yeah, I definitely do. Did he really struggle with the Titans and the Titans took him number 1 overall? Yeah, part of that is Titans haven't figured out their coaching stuff. And also Titans, let's face it, Titans are a worse team than us. That's one of the only teams that we beat, and we are in full control of that entire game. So let's go ahead and move on to our next quarterback. And we got to talk about him because it's Shedeur Sanders, right? Shedeur Sanders is not a first-round pick. He was picked fifth-round pick number 144 overall to Cleveland. He battled his way from being like probably the fourth or fifth quarterback on that roster, and he ended up with the starting position, right? Shedeur Sanders, his college stats, he came from a smaller school and, threw for 30 touchdowns and then 40 touchdowns his second year. And when he got to Colorado, he threw for 3,200 yards, 27 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions, rating of 151. The following year, the year that he got drafted, he had 477 attempts, 4,134 yards, 37 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. And I keep seeing people, in a rating of 168 with 42 times being sacked. I keep seeing people putting comparisons of Shedeur Sanders' stats and Fernando Mendoza's stats and saying, Fernando Mendoza isn't a good quarterback because look at how he compares to Shedeur Sanders. The thing is, man, is that I liked Shedeur Sanders, right? And I actually said we should draft this guy. And it's turned out to be kind of hit and miss for him. I don't think he should have gone in the 5th round, but I don't know if he's actually going to secure himself a starting role in the NFL moving forward. Honestly, I'm rooting for the kid, but the biggest problem that I have with Shedeur Sanders is his behavior and the way that he interviews and the way that he talks. Like, I find it very hard to understand what he's saying, right? And I can't even imagine him in a huddle calling plays. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just can't. Dude. Like the way that he talks, like, I get it, like he doesn't want to like culturally conform, right? But I don't know, man. The way that he had gone into interviews and the attitude that he's had and things like that really kind of turned me off about this kid. Now, from a talent standpoint, I think he's a good quarterback. Although now being on the Browns, this is the first time that he's not coached by his dad. So wow. Okay, Ricky Bobby. And that's going to be one of my points later, but I don't know about him being nowhere near Drake May, and we'll get into that. But Shedeur Sanders was not mobile on his feet at all. In fact, he had negative yards pretty much every year, even though he had 4 rushing touchdowns. And a lot of that was he played behind a pretty bad offensive line, so he got sacked a lot. Let's go ahead and get into our next quarterback, who is Caleb Williams, right? And Caleb Williams is a guy that I'm not really a fan of. Caleb Williams. Does he play really good? He does. Right? But if you look at the year, just look at the year that he got drafted. He had 388 passing attempts, 68% completion, 3,633 yards to 30 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, a rating of 170. So if you're just looking at stat lines for all those people that just want to look at stats and not actually watch tape on people and not actually watch games, then what you're actually going to see is that, like, oh shit, his stats are really comparable to Fernando Mendoza. Now, the year before, he had 500 attempts, 4,500 yards, and 42 touchdowns, right? But the year that he got drafted, pretty much the same stats. And nobody was out here saying, oh, no, Caleb Williams, he's not going to be able to do this or that in the NFL. People were more saying, like, I don't know about this dude that's wearing nail polish, right? They're saying things like that. But what they were not concentrating on was his ability to actually be an NFL quarterback. And, a lot of that is his playmaking ability. He's a guy that will scramble, extend plays, and throw in awkward positions and get things done, right? And it's translated really well to the NFL. It did not his first year, and he is not a rushing quarterback. His last year in college, he had 136 rushing yards and 11 touchdowns on his feet, which is nice to be that dual threat, right? But, his first year with the Bears, it didn't look super great. And it was like, oh, dang, I think that the Commanders made the right decision with Jaden Daniels, and the Bears messed it up. Well, year number 2, they're able to go out and get a coach, Ben Johnson, right? And a lot of that was based off the fact that Caleb Williams was there. He had a quarterback, and he said, all right, I'm going to go over here instead of going to teams like the Raiders where they can't figure out their quarterback position. And now, I mean, look at them in the playoffs. Just all of a sudden, very quick turnaround. They've been a pretty shitty team for a while, and they had a lot of holes, and they built things the proper way. They went out there and they built up that offensive line. They used free agency. They used their resources, and they were able to go and set up this quarterback and coach to succeed. But what they did is go get the quarterback first. So if we go, if we could go and get a quarterback in the first round, number 1 overall, okay, maybe the first year we're not in the playoffs or the Super Bowl, right? But we give ourselves the opportunity to actually have a playmaker under center, and then we can go out there and build the rest through the draft, through free agency, through next year's draft, pick up a good head coach, and you put all those pieces in place properly, which they keep saying Brady and Spytek are going to be able to do. And let's be fair, right? John Spytek, everybody's judging him on this draft. For one, Pete Carroll did have his hands in the draft and trading a 3rd-round pick for Geno Smith and things like that. But there's things about this draft that you got to understand. When a GM goes into a new team, they're picking up with the drafting team from the last regime. And then their second year as a GM, that's when they really get to go in and put all their people in the building. And so we're really going to be able to have the opportunity to see a true Spytek draft this year. Now, I'm not saying that Spytek is just, he's going to be the best. I'm saying that let's not just judge him based off of 1 year. And really, a lot of that is playability, right? Because I don't really like that we took a running back at number 6 overall, but I have a feeling that in a year or two, we're going to be super happy about that. I don't like that he got Jack Besh in the 2nd round. I would have rather him get an offensive lineman in the 2nd round. But what did he do? He went and got 2 offensive linemen in the 3rd round that Pete Carroll just refused to play until recently. And he also got a corner in the 3rd round, which Pete Carroll basically refused to play until recently. And all 3 of those players play good. They could be starters. Jack Besh, when he's targeted, does absolutely great. He's just not really targeted very much. And he's open. If you look at the tape, he's open. You know what I'm saying? So let's go ahead and move into our next quarterback, Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels, 6'4", 210 pounds. This is a guy that I absolutely said trade away the farm to go get him. He was Antonio Pierce's guy. It didn't work out that way. So most years he had, in the 2,000, just under 3,000 passing yards range. His first year at LSU, 2,900 yards, 17 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. Now, this is where the year that he won the Heisman, with only 327 passing attempts, he had 3,800 passing yards, 40 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, a rating of 208. I didn't even know the rating could get that high. And if you look at his rushing that year, he had 1,134 rushing yards, 10 rushing touchdowns, along of 85. So, he was an absolute beast. But the problem is that when you have a quarterback who runs that much, he's going to get hurt, especially somebody who's skinny like Jaden Daniels. You see Anthony Richardson out there on the Colts cannot stay healthy and he's a big dude, because he runs the ball too much and then he ends up getting hurt. So Jaden Daniels, would I say Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams are better quarterbacks than Fernando Mendoza? Yes. If you put Fernando Mendoza next to them on the stat line or on the field, these guys are better quarterbacks. And it is what it is. So our next guy, Drake May, Patriots. He was, and Jane Daniels was first round pick number 2 overall. This same draft, Drake May, 6'4", 225 pounds, first round pick number 3 overall. He played 3 years at North Carolina. Now, he didn't really become a starter until his second year, 4,300 passing yards, 38 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, rating of 157. That looks pretty damn good. The following year, and that was on 517 attempts. The following year, he had 425 attempts, 3,600 yards, 24 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions, a rating of 149. That year, he had 449 rushing yards and 9 touchdowns on his feet. Now, those stats compared to Fernando Mendoza, and I watched a lot of tape on Drake May when he was coming out in the draft because I really thought we were going to get a quarterback that year. And I liked Drake May. He had good tape. I liked the way he played. I just liked Jaden Daniels better, right? And Drake May, his rookie year wasn't super great. It was all right. But now in his second year, they're leading the AFC. You know what I'm saying? Why? Because they did the same thing that we keep saying to do. You pick up your quarterback first. Then you'll be able to do things like making moves for your offensive line and other pieces in free agency. You'll be able to draft around that quarterback to make sure he can succeed. And then when you have that, you can actually get a good head coach in the building. Mike Vrabel, he was the second option for head coach for Tom Brady and John Spytek, right? First option was Ben Johnson. Didn't get that. Guess what? He's in the playoffs. Second option was Mike Vrabel. Didn't get that. Guess what? He's in the playoffs. Third option, well, I guess we'll go get Pete Carroll and he'll be a good short bridge guy, right? So, and at that point, I think Spytek said, you know what, man? We're running it with Pete Carroll and Geno Smith. I'm going to get a running back because this is going to be a shit season. And I think that we were overhyped by Pete Carroll because Pete Carroll talked so good. And he's like, yeah, I'm used to winning 10 games a year and all this stuff. And we bought in, and that went pretty damn bad. And so if you want to compare Drake May to a Fernando Mendoza, I will tell you that Fernando Mendoza and Drake May are pretty damn similar. I see a lot of similarities. I think that Drake May is more talented physically than Fernando Mendoza, and I think that mentally Fernando Mendoza has a one-up on Drake May. So if you tell me that Fernando Mendoza could play like Drake May in the NFL, sign me up all day. All right. Michael Penix Jr. This is a guy that was drafted surprisingly by the Falcons, and the Falcons had just paid Kirk Cousins a ton of money. And then in the first round, pick number 8, they picked up Michael Penix Jr. It was rumored that there was a conversation, and it was between the Vikings, the Broncos, and the Raiders. And the Vikings said, we want J.J. McCarthy. The Broncos said, we want Bo Nix. And the Raiders are like, cool, we want Michael Penix Jr. And so all teams agreed that we don't need to trade up. We don't need to move around. We can just sit where we're at. That's the rumor, right? And then Falcons out of nowhere, boom, Michael Penix Jr. Well, it took us out of the quarterback race on that. If you look at his status, he's on the IR. That was his problem in college football. He kept having knee injury after knee injury. He played for Indiana Hoosiers for 4 years, and none of those years looked good at all. And a lot of that was due to injuries and things like that. Then he went over to Washington. He played in Washington for 2 years, so he was in college football for 6 years. Those 2 years, however, he put up 4,600 yards the first year with 31 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. And then the second year, he put up 4,900 yards, 36 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions, 150s ratings. And both of those were on like 550 attempts. Ton of attempts, ton of passing. You're putting up big numbers, but did he win anything? No. He didn't, you know, and he's not a rushing quarterback. His last year in college, he had 8 yards rushing, 3 touchdowns. So would I say, that we dodged one without not getting Michael Penix Jr.? For sure. I think that we definitely, Adolf, with the follow salute, I think that we definitely dodged a bullet with not getting a Michael Penix Jr. because Michael Penix Jr. absolutely stays injured. Mr. Glass. So let's go on to J.J. McCarthy. And this guy was picked first round 2024, pick number 10 by the Vikings. 6'3", 219 pounds. He did not play his first year because he ended up with a knee injury. And then Sam Darnold went out there and balled out. So J.J. McCarthy played for Michigan under Jim Harbaugh. He won a natty. And if you look at his stats, it's really just 2 seasons because he played for 3 years. 2 seasons that he really, played full seasons. And that was 322 attempts, 2,700 yards, 22 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, rating of 155. The next year, 332 attempts, 2,991 yards, 22 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, rating of 167, 202 rushing yards, 3 touchdowns. So those actually look very similar to Fernando Mendoza stats, right? And I'm going to tell you, I'm not a big J.J. McCarthy fan, right? I think that J.J. McCarthy is a good quarterback. There are things about him that I don't like very much. And he's only 22 years old. So I think that he's going to mature more. When the Vikings have had him healthy on the field, that's when they've absolutely played their best. But the dude just is not staying healthy. It's not going like that for him, but they're, when you look at the Vikings are a well-coached team. They have a good defense. They have a good head coach. And they have their quarterback, but the dude cannot stay healthy. Would I take Fernando Mendoza over J.J. McCarthy? Yes, I definitely would. All right, Bo Nix, drafted 2024, round number 1, pick number 12. 6'2", 217 pounds. This dude played for Auburn for 3 years and then 2 years in Oregon. He was in the 2000s for passing yards at Auburn and didn't break 20. In fact, he had 16, 12, and 11 touchdowns. Then he transferred over to Oregon, where his first year he had 3,500 passing yards, 29 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. And then the year he was drafted, 470 attempts, 4,500 passing yards, 45 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, a rating of 188, 234 rushing yards, and 6 touchdowns on his feet. So Bo Nix had really good stats that year, but he fell to pick number 12, which is very interesting. Now it's worked out for the Broncos because the Broncos lead our division. Bo Nix has that dog in him. I wouldn't say that he's exactly a super great quarterback. I'd say that he has timing. The dude has timing. He's able to actually make the proper plays at the proper times to get those wins. Because most of the wins that the Broncos have gotten, it's like, ooh, the Broncos are going to lose this game. And then they just they put it together at the right time and boom, Broncos get a dub. He's a very good matchup with Sean Payton as a head coach. So he's one that went into a situation where they already had the coach. They already had a good defense. They didn't have to do a whole lot of building around him, but they're another team that they were picking number 12 overall, which means that they weren't very good. Now they've turned it around, and it's worked out great for them overall. All right, let's go ahead and talk about the draft before, just because we only got 2 guys to talk about. Christian with the follow, salute. Bryce Young, drafted 2023, first round, first overall pick. Now, this guy is 5'10", 204 pounds, and he's maybe 5'10". When you look at Bryce Young, he played for Alabama for 3 years. And his last year at Alabama, 380 passing attempts, 300 and 3,300 passing yards, 32 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, rating of 163 with 185 rushing yards and 4 rushing touchdowns. Those stats are really pretty similar to Mendoza, right? Now, the year before, he had 4,800 passing yards and 47 touchdowns, right? But to have a year where he took such a step back, and there was no point where, from a talent perspective, did I ever hear anybody say Bryce Young is not good enough to play in the NFL? Bryce Young is not good enough to be a number one pick. What I heard people saying is Bryce Young is not big enough to play in the NFL. Bryce Young is too short to be a number one overall pick. And they did it anyway. And it went horrible for them. But now they're in the playoffs. You know what I'm saying? Actually, I don't know if they've actually fully secured that playoff spot, but I think so. I'm just going to roll with that. You guys correct me if I'm wrong on that. What are the chances that Raiders take Dante Moore? I think that the only way that the Raiders take Dante Moore is if we miss out on the number one overall pick. I don't think that there's any way that we end up taking him number one overall. All right, so I believe this is the last guy on our list. CJ Stroud, 6'3", 218 pounds, played 3 years at Ohio State. This is a guy that I wanted us to draft. And Dave Ziegler had a deal put in place where we were going to draft him. And we were going to trade up and draft him. He was picked round 1, pick number 2 by Houston. And what ended up happening is Josh McDaniels was our head coach at the time, and he said, nope, I don't want him. I want Bryce Young. Well, we couldn't get Bryce Young. And so we didn't get CJ Stroud. And CJ Stroud in college, 4,400 passing yards in his second year at Ohio. He didn't play at all his first year. He had 44 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, a rating of 186. The following year, he had 3,600 passing yards, 41 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, a rating of 177, 108 yards on the ground, no touchdowns rushing. And he came in his rookie year for the Texans, and they balled out. He has regressed a little bit, but also, didn't the Texans just secure a playoff spot? So, it is what it is, right? So, back to Fernando Mendoza. If Fernando Mendoza was in the draft last year with Cam Ward, Fedor Sanders, does Fernando Mendoza go number 1 overall? Right? And I'm not saying that if he tried to go into the draft from Cal, right? Let's say the way that he played this year, if it was the draft with Cam Ward instead of Ty Simpson and Dante Moore, where would he go in that draft? Would he go number 1 overall? Would he go number 2 overall? Because I'd say it's pretty safe to say that he compares up with that draft, and he might go number 1 over Ward. Luke says he would go number 1 over Ward, in my opinion, and I agree with that. Let's bump it back a draft. Let's put Fernando Mendoza in the draft with Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, J.J. McCarthy, Michael Penix Jr., Bo Nix. Where does he go in that draft? I'll tell you what. He doesn't go over Caleb Williams. He does not go over Jaden Daniels. I don't think that he would go. Let's see, Luke says he would go 4th after May at that time. I think that it would have been a toss-up on who goes first, Fernando Mendoza or Drake May. And J.J. McCarthy, Michael Penix, Bo Nix, all those guys would get drafted after him. So if you're telling me that in that draft, if Fernando Mendoza would have been available for the Raiders to get, that we wouldn't have got him, that we would have said, no, it's not worth getting him, I don't know. I still think that there would be some people. The majority of the people that I keep seeing are people that are saying no quarterback can help us. No quarterback can help us. Why? Why? Because if you look at the Raiders over the last 20 years, we have sucked for most of the time. You know why? Well, let's see. We had a good quarterback in Rich Gannon, 2001, 2002, when we were, running for the Super Bowl. And then after that, what did the quarterback room look like? Not great, right? Not great. And then we had the number 1 overall pick, and we pick up Jamarcus Russell. And people are still in trauma about that. It's going to be 20 years. And people are still saying, no, the Raiders shouldn't pick up a quarterback number 1 overall because look at Jamarcus Russell. That was like 20 years ago. You know what I'm saying? Like, what are we even talking about? Biggie Big says Mendoza wouldn't get drafted over any of those QBs, not even McCarthy. I don't believe that, not even for a second. I think Mendoza is definitely better than all of those QBs, better than McCarthy, better than Penix. Bo Nix, he would have gone before him in that draft, even though Bo Nix had really good stats. I mean, J.J. McCarthy went before Bo Nix. You know what I'm saying? True poet with the follow. Salute. The thing is, man, is that it's been 20 damn years since we drafted a quarterback in the first round. The only time that we've been good since then, we drafted a starting quarterback in the second round named Derek Carr. And Derek Carr, 2016, man, led us to 12 wins, and then he broke his damn leg. I remember watching that game, man, and Derek Carr was never the same after that game. And so what it comes down to is that the Raiders, people saying, oh, a quarterback can't fix this team. The only way to even try to fix this team is to go and get a damn quarterback. Quit living on the trauma of the past of Jamarcus Russell. Some of the same people that are saying, no, a quarterback won't fix this team, will also say throughout the conversation, well, let's go bring Derek Carr back. Let's go trade for Joe Burrow. Let's go get Lamar Jackson. Like, you could just pick these guys up. You can't get any of those guys without trading away a ton of draft capital. Derek Carr might be cheap on the draft capital. Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow, it's going to cost not only millions and millions and millions of dollars, but also tons of picks. So, I'm going to just keep going back to the same thing that I've been saying. You get a quarterback. Once you lose to Kansas City. You secure the number 1 overall pick. Then Pete Carroll will hopefully just retire. If not, you fire him, right? But the key to this is you got to make sure that you already have a coach on board, right? Because you don't want to be like Josh McDaniels and, get rid of Derek Carr and then go, okay, Tom Brady, we want you. And then Tom Brady says, actually, I'm going to retire. And then Josh McDaniels went back to Derek Carr and said, oh, I'm sorry, we messed up. And Derek Carr said, no, you made my wife cry. I'm done. And so then he had to scramble and went and got Jimmy Garoppolo. So we don't want to be in a position where we fire Pete Carroll and then Clint Kubiak says, you know what, man, I want to be an offensive coordinator for one more year before I become a head coach, right? Mike LaFleur says, I'm not ready to leave the Rams yet. Jesse Minter says, I'm not ready for a head coaching job yet. And then you're in a position where, oh, shit, we fired Pete Carroll, and now we got to pick up some weird interim coach for 1 year or something, and that's going to be stupid. Instead, you play it like the Bears did. What the Bears did was they had plans to go get Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson said, I'm not ready to be a head coach yet. I'm going to go back to the Lions and be an offensive coordinator for 1 more year. So the Bears said, cool, we're going to stick with this coach that we don't even like. And we're going to go ahead and just play out this year. So if we knew that Clint Kubiak was not ready to go and be a head coach, okay, well, we're going to run it back with Pete Carroll, even though it's probably going to suck, right? Cool. Let's go ahead and do that. We already have him in the building. We're already paying him. Cool. Let's just roll with that, right? And you make sure that you can secure your head coach. Honestly, what I believe is going to happen is we're going to have that number one overall pick. And then during the offseason, we're going to be able to hire a head coach. And I hope that it's Clint Kubiak, might be somebody else, right? We're going to pull in a good head coach, and he's going to be able to have his pick of the litter in the draft. Let's face it. What's going to happen is Fernando Mendoza is the pick at number one overall. And then we're going to end up with a head coach that's brand new that goes and gets Fernando Mendoza. And then the official with the follow salute. And then what's going to end up happening is you're going to have this head coach that's young, that's up and coming, that comes from a good coaching tree. There's several on the market. You know what I'm saying? And they're going to have this rookie number one overall pick to go ahead and build around. And it might not look perfect the first year. In fact, I honestly don't think that we would even be in playoff contention the first year. I think that we'd definitely be a lot better than we were this year and last year and the year before and the year before. You know what I'm saying? Mendoza's test will be his intelligence in NFL. I think that's a little scrambled, but I think that his intelligence is really good. What's going to be the key to his success in the NFL. And look, you guys, to be quite honest, I think I've seen enough because of all the tape that I've watched, because of the Ohio State game. There were several big games in there. Oregon, there was these games that really were. He showed me that it's like, all right, like he's doing what he needs to do, right, at the right times. But we do have the college football playoffs that are about to happen, and we're going to watch him play against Alabama, and we're probably going to end up watching him play against Ohio State again, right? I really am going to be paying close attention, right? Because I'm a guy that I don't just get so stuck in my ways that I can't see what's in front of me. If Fernando Mendoza goes into the college football playoffs and he absolutely shits the bed, and Ty Simpson or Dante Moore or one of these quarterbacks plays lights out, I'm not going to be stupid enough to start thinking like, you know what? Yeah, that happened, but I'm going to just stick with my guy, right? Because I got no attachment to Fernando Mendoza other than I believe that he is the most pro-ready quarterback in this draft. Do I think that Fernando Mendoza is going to be a top 5 quarterback his rookie year? No. Do I think that he has potential to be a top 10 quarterback in the league? I do. I honestly do. If you don't believe that or you don't think that, that's fine. You don't have to. In fact, I don't encourage you to leave from here. If you believe that it's somebody else, if you believe that he's not, provide me with evidence, right? Give me information, right? Especially if you put out on the comments of videos when I'm not live, and you can really, or get on my Facebook, TRU Raider, TikTok, TRU Raider Podcast, get in the comments and start telling me these are the reasons why I think it's better to take Dante Moore. Here's links to different videos or different things, tape breakdowns. Like give me the evidence, right? Because if you give me the evidence to do the research on it, I'm going to go do that research. Humani, what about Archie Manning? The problem with Archie Manning is, yes, he comes from an amazing family and he's going to be a good quarterback. I would be absolutely shocked. Oops, hold up. I would be super shocked if Archie Manning, didn't just absolutely become another Manning NFL legend, right? The problem is that he's probably going to be the number 1 overall pick next year. And unless you're planning on being, the number 1 pick 2 years in a row, which I don't even know if that's ever happened. The odds on us being the number 1 pick 2 years in a row are very, very slim. So then you're in a point where it's like, okay, I'm going to trade up to go get him. Guess what? Whatever team lands as the number one overall pick next year with Archie Manning coming out in the draft, you better believe that they are not going to trade away that pick. So that's the problem with those kind of moves. You cannot depend on the fact that next year is going to be better, right? Last year, when Cam Ward was, the quarterback that's coming out in the first round, and then there was Jackson Dart, which I forgot to put on that list actually, which I would say Fernando Mendoza is better than Jackson Dart, and going to stay healthy longer too. And I like Jackson Dart. I do. I really like Jackson Dart a lot. The thing that happened during that draft is everybody said this is a super weak quarterback class. You have Cam Ward, you have Shedeur Sanders, and you have Jackson Dart. And so next year is going to be a strong quarterback class. That's what they told us. Next year is going to be a strong quarterback class. What happened? Nussmeier fell. Drew Allard got hurt. What else happened? Who else fell off? Because there was a lot of people that just kind of fell off of that. Trade for Levis. Come on, man. Will Levis, Mr. Mayo. So all these quarterbacks just kind of fell off, and now we're stuck with, well, we have Fernando Mendoza, and if Dante Moore actually declares for the draft, then those two will go in the first round. And then some people say, well, maybe Ty Simpson will go late in the first round. So this way deeper quarterback class ended up being actually a very thin class. So then everybody keeps saying, well, next year's class is way better. You got Archie Manning, you got Julian Sain, you got CJ Carr. Who else? Dante Moore, if he stays in college. You know what I'm saying? And what's going to end up happening is what? What if that quarterback class isn't as deep as everybody's saying? Then what? What if you're drafting in a spot where you can't get a quarterback? Then we're stuck with Malik Willis or Geno Smith or Kenny Pickett or Aiden O'Connell or all these super half-ass quarterbacks that it's like, look, what are you going to do with these quarterbacks besides just get through the year? Or you could just go ahead and go get a damn quarterback this year. We're guaranteed a top 2 pick in the draft, right? Because the Falcons beat the Rams, the strength of schedule for the Jets changed. And so now, no matter what, even if we beat the Chiefs and the Giants lose to the Cowboys, we're going to pick number 2. If we lose, we guaranteed pick number 1. If the early morning game, the Giants go out there and they beat the Cowboys, then we can go and beat the Chiefs and still pick number 1 overall. But if the Giants lose to the Cowboys, to pick number 1, we got to there's a couple of things that can happen. There's a couple of teams that if they win, I think it was like we need 3 different teams to win in order for the Giants' strength of schedule to increase enough that we win, they lose against the Cowboys, and we still pick number 1. I don't think that that's very likely, and I don't like all those equations. Just lose to the Chiefs. You get your number 1, and hell, you go out there, you get a quarterback on a rookie deal, and then you build to suit those needs. You get the coach that's going to fit with that. You get the coordinators that are going to fit with that. And when you have a number 1 overall quarterback, that's very inviting for coaches and coordinators and everybody to kind of come into the building and yeah, let's rally around this young quarterback. I believe Fernando Mendoza is absolutely a game changer for us. I don't believe Fernando Mendoza takes us to a Super Bowl in his rookie year or anything weird like that. I think that he absolutely makes us a competitive team in the NFL and a competitive team in our division. And I'm going to stand on that. I will stand on that all day. So you guys, look, man, I've been on for an hour. Oh, man, I got to touch on that because Little Cookie Monster said, what about Cam Miller? I had a guy in the comments today, man, that was just telling me, oh, Cam Miller's better than Fernando Mendoza and all these things. And it's just not true. He had good college stats, and he was playing in what, North Dakota or South Dakota or something. Very small school. He's a 6th-round pick who's on the practice squad. Played one good preseason game, and then the other 2 preseason games not so good. Cam Miller is not better than Fernando Mendoza. Aiden O'Connell was not better than Fernando Mendoza. I am going to stand on this, is that the Raiders would be absolute fools to not go and draft him. It is the absolute best move that we could do, and clip it. And if we do it and he's a bust, come show it to me later and rub it in my face, because I stand on that. Like always, Nation, I love you guys. I'm out of here. I'll be putting out some videos in the next couple of days, and I will definitely be live during the game against the Raiders. And I will see you guys there. All right.